Just a couple days.
Maybe they have the masters early.
I heard your voice, I was like.
All right, good evening. We're going to continue our study in John, the book of John. It's getting pretty exciting now. You know, if you think about like the plot of a movie, it just keeps on building and building and building. And as we've seen back in the earlier chapters of John, mainly starting at 10, where he started building his reputation, explaining who he was. He was taking every opportunity he had to be able to go to these festivals, these different events that they were having, commemorations, to be able to set his point in view. And as we'll see tonight particularly, we're going to see where his word starts dividing his believers and people. And we're going to see that, and we're going to be able to make application, of course, to that even today. As he gets stronger, it seems like the divide in what they were trying to do or trying to accomplish continues to divide further and further away. And as we know, the book of John is a book not just to go through to tell the history, but to really apply what Jesus was all about and what he was doing here. And in this one here, we specifically talked about how he introduced himself and he was able to talk more about his believers. We're going to be able to see that in the last part of 11 as we go into 12. And we're going to see a big contrast, a shift in the way the people who were trying to kill him are really going to go after him now. There's going to be a huge shift in that. But before we go, let's go to God in prayer. God, our Father in heaven, we are so thankful we're able to come and study from your word, to be able to understand you more, to be able to dig in deep and to be able to ask questions and answer questions and see exactly what you've provided for us, and to be able to understand you even better, to be able to apply it to our lives, to be able to teach, to be able to live a life that's even closer and more loving towards you. We pray, God, that we're able to have an open mind and to study and to see what this really says, and to look deep into that and break down blinders that we may have, to be able to understand what you really want for us and what you meant. We are so thankful for your Son Jesus and what he has provided for us, that he sacrificed, the death that we were reading about, to be able to be a believer, to be able to be close to you. And we're so thankful for that, God. And it's in his name that we pray. All right, just a quick review. You know, we saw it started back in chapter 10 when he comes across and explaining why he was the good shepherd and what it meant to be the shepherd, and the good shepherd as opposed to the bad shepherd who lays down his life for us. So he was just laying that foundation. At that point, people were still understanding more and more about that area. And then we started seeing where he also started talking about where I am the resurrection and life. So we could see what is beyond that from the shepherd itself. And we just kind of walked into a little bit more and more, deeper and deeper, as he continued to go through and open up what his plan was, and to be able to explain more and more to his disciples, to be able to talk about who is a real believer and who isn't a real believer. So we started seeing a little bit more of that and understanding a little bit more of that. And then we came to the section where he was going to his last and final, at least in the book of John, his last and final miracle. There were 7 of them. And that was what? What was that? Of course, when he raised himself, it was a miracle, but at least in the other one. Lazarus, the raising of Lazarus. That was the last lesson that we learned, and we saw that there was a specific reason why he hesitated. And what was that? Because his time is what? Is not our time, right? The timing of it all. So he actually set it aside where he loved Lazarus, and we also saw two other individuals in that. We're going to see him in this section too. Who were those two? It was with Lazarus.
Mary and Martha.
Mary and Martha, right? Who he loved. So we're going to see those characters again introduced in this section as well. But what was the impact of raising him from the dead? What kind of results? What kind of reaction did he get?
A lot of fear.
What was that?
Fear.
Fear?
And understanding of what he was saying and doing.
Okay. What else?
A lot of belief there. A lot of belief.
A belief, yes. And we also saw where the belief changed, where initially they didn't understand, why he didn't do it. And he explained a little bit later what the delay was for. Why was it 4 days? Why was it 4 days? To really show that he could do what he was going to do. So he was really laying the seeds down to be able to show that life and also death, who has control of that? He does, for one, and the Father. And what did that do to the people who were trying to get after him and kill him? It even made it stronger, didn't it? At that point, they were trying to even more so. And that's kind of where we're going to move into in this lesson number 18. We're going to see, after raising Lazarus, the reaction to what Jesus did. Did it bring a lot more people in? What was that?
A lot more people wanted to kill him.
Both sides.
So both
We had believers come in, and we also had an additional folks who wanted to kill him.
Right.
Why was that? We're going to see that a little bit. Why do you think that is? We have a divided response.
Yeah.
Do we have that now today? In some cases, even more so, whenever we start really getting into understanding what God and Jesus does for us, what does the other side do? They seem to even take a stronger sense. It's almost like two different sides start pulling against each other. And that's where we're going to see a divided response here in this chapter here, where it even gets even more intense and it plots deeper and deeper. So how far do you think we are from where the crucifixion is? So on a timeline, where do you think we're at?
The last week.
We are coming up absolutely on the last week. So it's getting really intense, and it's going to start escalating very fast. We see that, we'll start seeing that a little bit more. So what was coming up in this chapter here? What type of a festival, or what are they going to be doing in this area?
Passover.
The Passover. Who said that? The Passover's coming up. Exactly. So what does that mean when they say the Passover?
The celebration of Egypt and the Passover there. And then now Jesus is going to become that prophecy, becoming the Passover lamb.
So we're going to start. So again, it's very symbolic again at this point. As everything goes through, as John was talking about, is very symbolic. So we are about 6 days before Passover, and it's around, they say, March and April of AD, 30 AD. And the scene takes place where? Bethany. Right, which is about 2 miles east of Jerusalem. And the context is Jesus, he withdrew. Remember when he withdrew from the Jerusalem area? Why was that when he withdrew a little bit more in the middle of chapter 11?
Well, back in chapter 7, he no longer walked in Judea because the Jews wanted to kill him.
Exactly. So there's probably about 3 months or so where he was, from the time that he went through the last feast when he left, he went, it's about 3 months, because that was around December or so, October. And now we're sitting in the April time frame, so he was out about 3 months or so teaching and going around. But then he was going to get ready to go back to Bethany. Why was he going back to Bethany?
Well, there was a celebration, I guess, for Lazarus
Mhm.
going to, well, Mark and Matthew tell us it was at Simon the leper's house.
Mhm.
They gave a dinner for him,
Right.
for Lazarus.
Right, and we're going to read about that in this upcoming chapter exactly, and that's why he was there. He was still there at that point. And we're going to find out a little bit later within that last week or so where Jesus couldn't even move around at all, because his time was not set without having either people around him or in different locations as he went through and continued to teach. Let's open up our Bibles to verse 45, John 11:45. And we're going to see this divided response that we have. We'll read from 45 to 46, and it says, "Many of the Jews, therefore, had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him, but some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done." So what do we got here? We have two different camps, right? We have some of them who had seen, and what did they do? They believed in him. But the others went to the Pharisees. Go tell them. Hey, let's go tell the Pharisees here. We know that the Pharisees are already out after Jesus. They would probably want to know what the situation was where he had risen someone from the dead, Lazarus. Why would they want to know that? Because they're like, wait a second here. Here's this guy again, Jesus. We've been trying to figure out what we're going to do with him, and then now they're going to basically tattle on him. So some of them, not all of them, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. It was really a betrayal in a lot of cases to go out there and try to tell on him to see what he's doing. We also see that there's going to be division among people in John 7:43. We talked about that where it said, so there was a division among people, and that division was over Jesus, the light and the dark. So we already see that this is coming around. So right now it's starting to get a little bit more dicey. All right, let's take a look at 47 through 48. And we're going to figure out why the Pharisees had an issue with this. So it reads, "So some chief priests and some Pharisees gathered the council together and said, 'What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation.'" So the truth comes out, what these folks were really interested in. So you would think that if they went and told these Pharisees or these leaders about Lazarus and raising him of the dead, what would you initially think that they would want? They'd be like, wait a second, are you serious? He did this? Who can raise someone from the dead after 4 days? And then they probably want to see him, you'd think, right? But what was their first thing that they said?
They was worried more about themselves.
Yeah. They were worried about themselves. Why were they worried about themselves, Glenn?
Just taking away their authority, taking away their hopes and their dreams on the wrong thing. I mean, they're worried about what they can see and know. It's more about their personal feelings and what they want.
Right.
Control and power.
It's also
Yeah.
against the law. They're worried about the emperor, who is supposed to be a god.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't know God's over the emperor of Rome, which could be against the
So
law.
they were also fearing political fallout too, because like you were saying, the Romans. What was their thing? And the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. They weren't worried about having the Messiah come, what they've all been waiting for, and they've all been celebrating and all these other things. That these leaders, these Jewish leaders, were the ones in charge of these types of festivals and these types of events that were coming on. And yet, they were the ones who were saying, wait, let's stop this. Why? Because this man performs many signs. If we let him go like this, everyone will believe in him. So they want to try to stop him, right? Amazing. And and we see in Acts 5 and 17 that there was jealousy of the high priest as well. And even in Matthew 27 and 18, when Pilate knew that he was going to hand him over out of what? Envy. So a lot of times we can see with the application here that power can and does change the thoughts of leaders, or even other people who are going to talk to leaders about it. So we have to be able to understand that, and understand that that even fear can change the leaders. What were they fearing? What was the leaders fearing again? They feared Rome. They feared Rome, right? Valid. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now let's take a look at 11 and 49 through 52. 49 through 52, and we're going to see almost like a prophecy here. And it's interesting the way it falls out, what the high priest said. Can I get a reader from 49 to 52?
And one of them,
Caiaphas.
Being high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expeditious for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish. Now this he did not say on his own authority, but being high priest that year he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation."
Isn't that interesting? Because you had Caiaphas here, who specifically says what exactly is going to happen, isn't it? But why did he say it? He said it because of the situation beforehand. They wanted to stop him. We want to kill this one guy because why? The Romans are going to come in and get us. So, so it's ironic in a lot of cases. It's irony how Cephas speaks to this political group in that situation. But in actuality, was he telling the truth of what's going to happen?
Partially.
Yeah.
Because he just didn't believe in the back end. He didn't believe in the resurrection.
Right. But what was God's plan? Exactly what he said, which was very interesting. And I guess if I was to look at that and to get some observation or application in here is that, God rules over everything, no matter, and he'll even use who to get his plan done. Bad people, bad situations, whatever it is, he gets it done. And a lot of times we don't even know. Things that happen around us now they happen for a reason. And who's in control? Go ahead.
I think it's interesting that they couldn't really put him to death legally. The Jewish leaders could. So here they're afraid of the Romans coming in. But then later on they're going to say to the Roman authorities, if you don't put him to death, then you're an enemy of Caesar, because this guy's trying to start an insurrection.
Right.
It's crazy, because like you're saying, it all worked out for the best in the end, but they couldn't possibly have seen how ludicrous their planning was and their scheming was.
Right. But you know who does? God does. Can you hit those fans in the back? Any more comments on that? It's ironic, isn't it? So we have an official plot coming up here in John 53 through 54, and we're going to see how they react to the high priest's plan, or at least his motivating speech that he said. Can I get a reader from 53 through 54?
So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness to a town called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples.
So this was almost the changing. If you was to see it in a movie script, you would see them all back there planning all the way from the time when the bad disciples go, or the believers who were not following Jesus go and talk to the high priests and the Pharisees, and they're sitting there planning, and they call the council together. They're all talking about it. You hear a big speech, and then all of a sudden, from that date on, they made plans to put him to death. Dun, dun, dun. You would see that right there at that point. And then right there, so Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews. Why is that? Because they had that specific plan out there for him. And was he scared? No. Why wasn't it?
He knew he had to fulfill the promise from God.
Was it finished?
Yep.
What's that?
He wasn't finished yet.
He wasn't finished
That
yet.
wasn't his
There was a
time.
specific time. And he knew the exact time, he knew the exact place, everything is going to happen. But at this point, the Jews, the leaders, they made a plan to put him to death. And why did they want to put him to death?
To save themselves.
Just to save themselves.
To save their high place in society.
Right. Yeah, to save themselves. So that point on, he withdrew until, we can see that in Mark. Mark made the official death, the observation is that Jesus withdrew until his final hour. We see that in 13:1. Go ahead.
In 51, John gives us a little commentary on Caiaphas' pronouncement there. It says, now he did not say this from himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. And not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad.
Yeah,
So he makes a comment. John
right.
gives commentary on that.
I wonder if he actually said that during that meeting, or if he said that earlier, he prophesied on behalf of, at being the high
John
priest.
wrote this 30 years later.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Balaam. He was supposed to go curse Israel.
Mhm.
He wound up blessing them.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. I noted that in there, and
I remember that.
so we see here, I guess the application that I would draw from this, about timing, what would you say? What would you say that the application is about timing again? All in God's time. God rules the clock. Jesus chose his hour of his own sacrifice. Isn't that amazing? He's not leaving it up to the Jews. He's not leaving it up to these leaders. He's specifically picking his own time until his hour is ready. You know, what's interesting too is that, you know, if you were sitting there, if we were sitting in this situation here watching it unfold, boy, wouldn't that be stressful? It would be absolutely stressful to be able to see all this and wondering what's going to happen. Why aren't you doing something, Jesus? What are we going to do here? Jesus just walks out. He just goes out in his own thing, but he doesn't walk, of course, as they said, freely, because he doesn't want to provoke. Interesting. Very interesting. So each day, you know, we're seeing these Passovers moving closer and closer towards the cross as we're watching this unfold. So then we move to another scene, and the scene comes to the supper at Bethany, and that's what I think Neil was talking about, where they all gathered together. And this goes through. This will take us really a little bit towards the end of the chapter, or at least the middle of the chapter, and it reads 12 verse 1 through 2. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, and whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table. So this was more or less, it seemed to me like a family scene where they all got together. He loved all three of them, and we only see at this point Martha there, but we also know Mary's going to be there as well. So they had basically a family get together to be able to eat, to socialize together. He had some of his disciples there, because we'll see a little bit later that he had the group of disciples and later to be apostles. A few of them there. We don't know exactly who. We know a few of them were there, just from the text itself. It also says that that it was in Luke 10, in verse 38 to 42. Martha was there serving, and Mary listened. So we see that situation there. So it's almost like each one of these believers had a role. If you kind of really want to think about it in that regard. The role of Lazarus was, okay, it was for him. He was there listening. as well as Mary, and then we had servers there. So we had kind of an expression of love throughout the entire group that was there. So it doesn't always go smooth though, because we're going to start seeing a little bit of conflict as it goes through here. And it starts out with Mary anointing in verse 3, right, 12 through 3. And it says, Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Beautiful sign, beautiful thing. But you know, they say also in some of the areas, some of the notes that that extravagant ointment was worth like 300 denarii. I think it might have said that a little later, but that's like a year's wage for that in that day. So that would be almost like 30 or 40,000 or even more, you know, today's area. So she anoints his feet, and what was that showing? What kind of an outward appearance showing was that?
Humility.
Humility, absolutely right. So she was humble. And not just humility, but love. Can you imagine taking that much of expensive oil that you saved for? Apparently she was not a rich person from what I understand from this. So she had to save up for it. She had to be able to, plan for it. You just don't have oil, $30,000 worth of this oil, a pound of it, which is like the size of a Coke can, I guess, of oil, and just lying around. So it is showing humility and also understanding, some of the anointing that they do. What do they do for death? The body of somebody dead. Don't they anoint them also? Oil? Okay, we'll get a little bit deeper into that. There is some cross-reference here in Matthew 26 and 6 and Mark also, where it's a parallel account, and it also emphasizes the prophecy meaning of this of the area. So what would that prophecy be? The death. So with that, we have the next scene, which Judas comes in, and Judas was like, "What? Oh yeah, that's good sense of the money, using it wisely." No, not at all. In verse 4 through 6, can I get a reader for that?
But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii
There you go.
and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. Having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it.
So, okay, the situation here, I'm sure it didn't unfold where they specifically said all that out loud. The first thing that was actually said was Judas saying, standing up or sitting down or being mean and rude about it, saying, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" Do you think that Judas really cares about the poor? Huh? Not at all.
I mean,
But at the time, people were just listening to him saying, But, John knew, and Jesus knows, of course. It's funny that Jesus didn't come up and just say, "You know what? Why are you even saying that? You don't think of the poor, you're a thief, you're whatever, you're this, you're that, and the other." He didn't say any of that. He said something different. That's interesting, and I'm really not sure. I could make the assumption that, of course, he understands how it is, and he lets things happen. He knows what's going to happen. He lets things happen. Jed.
well, just Judas' character here is interesting. It's established that he's less like he's portrayed as some kind of devil a lot of the time, like some kind of like twisted, evil person. I think his main fault is his greed. I've heard it said and explained his issue when Jesus actually died. His regret at that point was because he didn't expect it to happen. He fully expected Jesus to vanish like all the other times they tried to stone him or whatever, and he was going to make a cool 30 pieces of silver off the back of it. It's kind of running a scam. This is that character trait sort of
Right.
also being expressed is that he's in it for profit somehow, which is a
Right.
weird choice. But
You know, it is, you know, and it's interesting, and I'm not even sure how to explain this, but, you know, everybody has character flaws, right? And a lot of times we have to be able to identify those character flaws, and we have to be able to fight against them. We need to help against them, but, you know, apparently none of the disciples knew his character. Jesus did. You know, why didn't he just stop him right there and just completely, you know, berate him and send him on? I don't know the answer to that. I just know that he knows the plan, and he knows what's going to happen, and he knows his character, as you said. And, you know, at that point, he didn't say, take the money away from him, he doesn't need to deserve it, you know, whatever. He didn't do that. We're going to see what he says, specifically.
The distinction between these two people, Mary and Judas, they're both followers of Jesus. They've been there most of the time during his ministry. They've seen the same things. They've seen the miracles. And these are the two vastly different responses. Mary thinks the world of Jesus. She will do anything. She'll spend any amount of money to do whatever she needs to for Jesus. And Judas, of course.
And she plans to
Jesus
do
is
that.
nothing.
Right, right.
His value of Jesus is nothing.
You know, and I was talking with Lisa about this, the boldness, too, of Mary to go and spend that kind of money. And, you know, it wasn't like she was commanded and directed to and, you know, whatever else. She did it from the bottom of her heart. And specifically went out and brought this together and did this act. Go ahead.
It may not have been that she sacrificed for this, because I think the household of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, I think it was a wealthy household, because Jesus and his disciples had been hosted or
Right.
put up with
Yeah.
a number of times.
Good point. Good point.
And, but,
However,
but there is an expense, I mean, there is a value there.
absolutely.
And the other two, Mark and Matthew, they just say some of the disciples remarked or were indignant because of the waste.
Right.
But John, he names it, and
Yeah. See?
Judas.
She was also bold too, because back then, from what I've read, men and women they didn't eat together. So this probably was a room full of men. And she also let her hair down, which
Mhm.
women do not do, but it was to honor him.
Right. You know, and that's what, when I was reading some commentaries on this, and I agree exactly what they were saying, is that, you know, you're going to find situations where you have to take courage to do things for the right reason, just like she did. And she's going to get backlash on it, which she did get backlash on it. You know, and just to be bold enough to be able to do the right thing, to be able to understand that you are going to get backlash. And that's almost, you know, nowadays particularly, you know, you're going to get a lot of positive area, but you're going to get a huge amount of backlash. Look at the news in the last month of the types of backlash that Christians get and have gotten, all the way to death, right? For being able to speak out and not shy away from at least doing what they believe is right. Denise.
And they use the word anoint. That's used to anoint king and to anoint the high priest. This was not done in ordinary people. This was royalty. This was,
Yeah.
you know, and she anointed his feet, but there's other instances where women anointed his head.
Right. Okay, good point.
In Mark's account, it says, and they were scolding her.
Mhm.
So she did get some.
She took some heat on that, right? And the same thing we find out. If we're believers and we speak the truth, or we don't cave to the other side, we are going to get that type of grief shown to us. It's common. It was even back then, and it started getting even deeper and deeper as we'll start seeing. So Jesus comes to the defense of who? Judas? Absolutely not. He comes to the defense of Mary in the next section. And we're going to see in 7 through 8. Can somebody read through 7 through 8?
Then Jesus said, let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have always, but me you do not have always.
Okay, so why did she keep this, according to Jesus? Leave her alone, first of all. All those people that they were just talking about in Mark or Matthew that were getting on her, leave her alone. She kept this, she may keep this for the day of my burial. So that's where the combination of using that anointment and the burial starts linking together. And Jesus identified that immediately at that point. And it says, in the other section is, for the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me. That's interesting. What does that mean? When he's talking about Judas again. Judas saying, take all that money, 300 denarii, and go and give it to them. Well, you know what? She's all right. Leave her. She has her priorities set straight. You're going to be able to give to the poor. But for me, this time is very, very precious.
Well, and I think what he's kind of doing is indicting this sort of fake concern when he says this, like, oh, so now you care about the poor?
Mm-hmm.
Well, oh, she's trying to do something nice for me. And that's when we bring up how much money we could be giving to the poor instead. You know, it's very, I think he's pointing out how ugly that really is to say.
Hypocritical. But he's also saying that who has priority in our lives? Who has priority? Mary knew who the priority was. The other ones didn't. And that's who he's talking specifically to. Then in verse 9 and 11, we see where the living witness is going to be able to change the plot again. And who's the living witness in this case that they also want to kill? Lazarus. Right. They want to be able to plot for that. First you have belief, betrayal, and then the burial part of it. But they're going to kill the living. I didn't write it down there. There's also a living witness that they're going to work towards, and that's in verse 9.
We can look at Lazarus not only as a living witness, but a living miracle.
Yes,
The miracle of God.
well, and also that's what they were going to try to stop also, because why? Because everybody's going to start believing Jesus in that situation. So he was a living witness of that situation. So let's read that. Give me a reader from 9 through 11.
When the large crowds of Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus.
That's right. Lazarus' life becomes undeniable proof of Jesus, and that's one of their plots also. Why was their plot? Their plot wasn't to sit there and to be able to understand what this really means, this man Jesus who says he's the Son of God. They aren't none of that. They all are worried about fear. They're all worried about losing what they had. The cross references is, in John 15 and 18. If the world hates you, you know that he has hated me before he hated you. So, it's one of those situations that if the world is hating us, well, they hated him first. That's one of the reasons why they're going to be hating us. And it's also, these are notable signs that we can't deny in many cases. Now it's in Acts. So what is the application here in this situation? If you're a living testimony, you're going to be drawing fire. Hopefully not literally, but maybe. It's going to be hostile. It's going to invite hostility. Faithfulness may draw opposition. It usually does. But it also draws who? Draws others to Christ. Right? And you got to weigh yourself, what's more important? in a lot of situations like that.
I couldn't help thinking when I read that earlier, that the priest had killed Lazarus, he died again. What would happen? Jesus raise him again?
Yeah, it's one of those situations, you know, I don't know, but I'm sure that it would not work out in their favor, just like everything else isn't. Interesting. Go ahead. Yeah, oh, I thought you had your hand up. All right. That actually ends the section before we end up going into Jed's for the next area. So what application can we derive from all this about faith, for example? What is it going to do?
One point I see when they were worried about Jesus being there, they were worried about Lazarus, is when someone starts worrying about Jesus, you don't know at what point is going to be the tipping point for them. It could be anything. It may not be the same. It's different for every person. I mean, they may have seen Jesus do miracles and they were thinking about it, but then they see Lazarus and the light bulb goes off type thing. You know, you never know. So, you know, it's not.
Everybody's formula is different.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and that's something that we all need to be able to realize too. And it may not be you who set the seed, plant the seed. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's a seed that's planted later, and they continue to try to prove you wrong and find out maybe you're not wrong, or maybe they do prove you wrong and come and talk to you about it, and it you know, spurs them to continue to study. But we're out of time. I don't think that the bell's working right now. I see somebody going like this. Back.
The doorbell's not working.
We're about ready to get their book out. I appreciate you guys' comments. Not me.
Lean back.
What's up here? This.
No. You doing good, right? I don't want to talk. Get the candy.